He's one of the men who was in charge of the police undercover unit that's been accused of seeking to smear the family and friends of the murdered teenager Stephen Lawrence. But breaking his silence for the first time on his life undercover, Bob Lambert has told Channel 4 News that he does not accept there was a smear campaign against the Lawrences. But he admits it is possible details on people who visited the family home may have been passed to Special Branch, yet denies there was any attempt to undermine their campaign for justice. Bob Lambert has come forward following the allegations made in a Channel 4 Dispatches investigation broadcast last week. Our Home Affairs correspondent Andy Davies has this exclusive report.
He was the Special Branch man who infiltrated the Animal Liberation Front, got activists there jailed, slept with 4 women whilst undercover and fathered a child with 1, then went back home to his wife and other children. The police spy accused of firebombing a department store, of giving evidence in court under a false name, and now being linked to an alleged smear campaign against the family and supporters of the murdered teenager Stephen Lawrence. This is Bob Lambert. Utterly discredited, say some, certainly one of the most controversial figures in this unravelling story of British covert policing. In this, his first ever interview on his undercover role, he responds to last week's claims that Scotland Yard, when facing intense criticism following Stephen Lawrence's murder, sought to discredit the family's campaign for justice. Claims made by a former undercover police officer in this Channel 4 documentary.
Did your supervisors want intelligence on members of Stephen's family?
They wanted any intelligence that could have smeared the campaign, yes.
I especially want to say to Doreen and Neville Lawrence that I have always had the greatest empathy for their position, and I really do want to reassure them that at no time in my tenure as an SDS manager, which is from November 1993 until when I left in 1998, which was round about the time of the Stephen Lawrence inquiry, at no time was the Special Demonstration Squad concerned in smearing their family or their campaign.
It was this dispatches made in conjunction with The Guardian which propelled the role of undercover policing back onto the political agenda. In particular, the testimony of an undercover officer once supervised by Bob Lambert, who gave a highly disturbing account concerning one of the most shameful episodes in the history of British policing.
Had I, through my circles, come up with something along the lines of the family were political activists, somebody in the family was involved in demonstrations, drug dealers, anything.
The claim that there was an attempt by the police to try to undermine the Stephen Lawrence campaign provoked political fury. Calls subsequently by Doreen Lawrence, Stephen's mother, for a public inquiry have resonated around Westminster.
I have to say, nothing is off the table. If more needs to be done, if further investigations or inquiries need to be held, they will be held. This is not an acceptable situation. We must get to the bottom of it.
Bob Lambert says he became second in command of the police unit at the centre of these allegations, the Met's Special Demonstration Squad, 7 months after Stephen Lawrence's death. It was autumn 1993. Tensions between the BNP and far left had flared. Lambert arrived at the unit, it's understood, a couple of months after Peter Francis had been deployed undercover into a group called Youth Against Racism. One of Peter Francis's claims is that during this period, a police liaison officer assigned to the Lawrence family passed to Special Branch details of all those entering the family's house. There's no suggestion any liaison officer knew how that information would be used, but significantly, Lambert says this could have happened.
Were you or anyone in Special Branch receiving information from the family liaison officers who were with the Lawrence family?
Not to my direct knowledge, but I wouldn't rule it out.
Can you see just how appalling an intrusion that could be for a family like the Lawrences at that time?
Yes, I can see that potential, and I think that is that's an allegation that has to be looked at very closely. But I do urge Doreen and Neville Lawrence to really suspend judgment, hopefully not for too long.
Peter Francis has also stated that the police wanted to discredit Dwayne Brooks, the friend of Stephen Lawrence who witnessed his murder. Bob Lambert says he's not aware of that having happened. Lambert is not in a position to answer all of the claims, not least because he joined the undercover unit after Peter Francis was deployed. But he is unequivocal when it comes to the wider allegation that this unit was involved in trying to undermine the Lawrence family's campaign.
Did you or any other manager in this undercover unit ever task Peter Francis with gathering intelligence on the Lawrence family or the Lawrence campaign?
No, I can say 100% that I didn't, and I can be almost as certain, even during the period before I was there, that would not have happened.
If these allegations are true, it's a disgrace, said the head of Scotland Yard last week. And now we have two accounts. One of a former undercover officer who voluntarily stepped forward as whistleblower, the other reluctantly emerging into the limelight to defend himself. Both who in the past have proved themselves masters in deception.
What if Peter Francis is the only person telling the truth here? I mean, it's not in your or the Metropolitan Police's interest for these allegations to be corroborated. And I have to say, as someone who's lived a double life, such as you can be a skillful liar.
Yes, and I think that's why this will need the closest and sort of most able scrutiny. I do believe that that some judicial element will no doubt need to come and look at this. I'm happy, to be honest, if there is a public inquiry. I mean, I'll cooperate fully. I don't expect anyone or everyone to believe my own uncorroborated assessment.
Something of an understatement given the position he is now in. Lambert himself could soon be under investigation over allegations he basically went rogue whilst undercover, seducing targets, getting one pregnant, and involved in firebombing, an allegation he strenuously denies. There are those who would argue Lambert has no credibility. His former unit is mired in scandal, and he and his old friends are under scrutiny like never before. Could this be the beginning of a long, drawn-out damage limitation exercise?
I have always had the deepest feeling for Doreen and Neville Lawrence, and I can genuinely say to them that the work of the Special Demonstration Squad did a lot to support them and to reduce the threat of racist violence that was behind and very much part of the death of Stephen. I would ask them to take that from me very sincerely, and I would be, at some point in the future, if ever it's appropriate, I would be very delighted to speak to them directly on that.
Later this week on Channel 4 News, we will see Bob Lambert challenged on his own undercover life. Did he use a false name in court? Did he, as alleged in Parliament, firebomb a department store? Did he adopt a dead child's identity? And just how morally corrupt was his conduct in relation to the women he had relationships with whilst undercover?
I had no intention to target either of them. They were both, fine, upstanding citizens who really should not have, they had the misfortune to meet me. I can only apologise to them.
Tonight, Peter Francis has told Channel 4 News he stands by what he said and would be willing to say it all under oath. It doesn't surprise me, he said, that Mr. Lambert has responded in this way to me becoming a whistleblower and telling the public what really happened. Peter Francis says he has complete faith that a full independent inquiry will get to the truth.